Nic Marks is an independent policy advisor. He's a speaker, he's a statistician, he's a psychotherapist, and he's an author. As a fellow of the New Economics Foundation, Nic Marks created the Happy Planet Index, the 5 ways to well-being and the 5 ways to happiness at work. In 2019, he set up FridayPulse, a company specializing in applying the 5 ways to happiness at work, offering a happiness KPI and a 15-question 5 ways to happiness at work culture profile. He's delivered 2 TED Talks to date. He has a unique insight and he has ideas that are worth sharing when we're talking about looking after our mental health in work. We're delighted he has given so generously of his time to speak with us. Nic, it's over to you.
So thank you for asking me today. And I'm going to talk about the 5 ways to well-being and particularly about how we promote positive mental health
at work. Probably most of you know that the 5 ways to wellbeing were part of a UK government project, part of the Foresight project, 2008. And it was a large project, 106 different elements of it, and 5 ways was one of them. And I was at the New Economics Foundation then, which is a think tank in London. I founded the Centre for Wellbeing there. And we basically pitched this project. The idea was very much to take the idea of 5 fruit and vegetables a day and translate them into how we could do 5 positive actions for ourselves a day for our mental health. The brief was that they had to be evidence-based, had to have a universal appeal, they had to target the individual. We couldn't be saying government policy, we had to be saying what people could do in their own power. And there needed to be a need for variety, that there was different ways that people could do it. And we were very keen to use social marketing ideas, that you start from where people are, where their energy is, and you focus on building a relationship with them, between them. Intervention in it. You're positive, upbeat, aspirational. Government likes to tell us what not to do, not necessarily what to do. And there needs to be a sort of clear exchange for people that they can, they're going to get benefit from it easily, which is actually very easy for your positive mental health. We created a long list. We actually got Post-it notes and stuck hundreds of bits of evidence all over the place, and we started clustering them together. It wasn't a formal statistical cluster analysis, but it was a way of doing that. And we created a long list. So, yes, the 5 ways that made it are there, but also we identified that work was really good for people's positive mental health, just being in work and the type of work they did. That being out in nature was, the way we dealt with that was that we didn't have room for it, but we put it under be active, like go outside. We put it on take notice the changing seasons. And then also nutrition was important, particularly as a protection against mental ill health, but the evidence base has got even stronger in the last 10 years. So, but we felt the government already strongly messaged on that. In fact, 5 fruit and vegetables a day is so prevalent as a message that we didn't really feel we needed to do that in here. So they became, connect, be fair, empower, challenge, inspire. And we sought to make them very inviting and open to people. That's why we put 3 dots afterwards. So instead of saying connect, it's saying connect, try this. And they became very popular, very well used. Not only in the UK, in fact, New Zealand used them very widely and still do use them very widely in their public mental health campaigns, but also in terms of government policy. And they've also commissioned research on it. So the graph on the right is showing that the more of the 5 ways you do, the higher you're likely to be, your mental health is likely to be. They also tended to prioritize the social ones, connect and give. We deliberately frame those at the beginning and the end of ours so that people are reminded that well-being is very social. It's very much between us. They've actually put them at the front. They did that particularly out of the Christchurch earthquake emergency, where they basically focused on connecting, seeing that people had enough connections and whether they could give things back to the community if they were in a strong position. So they very much focused on those too. But in the UK, very widely used in lots and lots of different projects. And in fact, even though the brief was to individuals, people tended to use it in their community projects, checking that they were sort of doing all of them. And in a way, I think it just unpacked well-being at sort of the right level, that it gave people a lot of creativity in how they could do it. But they saw the holistic nature of it, that it was these 5 things interacting between them. And they've been immensely popular. I mean, there's been so many projects on them. We totally lost count of how many there are. But we did do a second report, which you may or may not have seen, where we brought it together and we tried to systemize how different policy areas are doing it. And that's still available. It's obviously was in 2012, so it's not necessarily as up to date as it would be, but it gives you an idea about what was going on. Now, as I worked at NEF for about 10, 15 years, I started to think about what I wanted to do next. And I was acutely aware that work was an opportunity. So it was there in the 5 ways. And we didn't do it because it was focused at the working population, organizational. But I sort of noticed that it's quite hard to reach adults through public policy. And so I thought, well, one way to reach adults is through work. And so I decided I wanted to work on the idea of work and how we could promote positive work, which includes positive mental health and goes right up to, productive work in lots of ways. And so as I've done that, I am, as said, I'm a statistician. And I wanted to think about I'd already thought about it, but how to operationalize the idea that feelings are data. And at the heart of it really goes that in some ways, the way our sensation, our perception, our feelings are saying whether the environment that we're in is good or bad for us. We feel happy when things are good. We feel unhappy when things are bad. We use emojis all the time to rate experiences. So it's very easy to then go to putting numbers on those. And I particularly work with this question: how have you felt at work this week? So it's got that feeling element, it's at work, it's this week. So it gives a time frame to it. And that's very helpful because, one, we can start drawing graphs with timelines, but also it's acknowledging that we're not happy all the time. Even, none of us are. In fact, there are different sort of wavelengths of people's experience. You can think about, the morning you've had, and there's going to be ups and downs of the morning. You can think about the week you've had. You can think about the year you've had. And I'm going to show you a graph of the year we've all had just in a minute. And you can think about a lifetime of ups and downs. So there's different wavelengths. But this is capturing that short wavelength of a week. It's about the right length of episode. We typically work in a sprint of a working week. But if you put all of that data together for all of our clients in this crazy year, you get a graph that looks like this. And it's actually going back into last year, but basically it's showing that before COVID struck, we were in a normal pattern. We do have a peak at Christmas. People are happier in the run up to Christmas. But generally speaking, people are around about 70 on our scale. And then COVID hits and there's this huge drop across all of our clients. And, March was scary. It was an anxious making time. We all had to adjust. Most of us suddenly had to change our place of work. HR departments, people departments had to scramble, helping people get home as they themselves were getting home. Huge pressure on HR and people departments this year. People being made redundant. It was a very, very difficult time. But then what you see is this sort of what I call the curve of resilience, where teams are rebuilding. And our clients are seeing this data every week. So this is data just from our clients. And actually, of course, we lost some clients that made people redundant. We had people furloughed. So there's some people outside in our data set anymore, but these are the people still working. And you can see them building back over time. And then, maybe some fatigue and the second wave hitting and winter coming and, the vaccine hasn't got factored into this, but, that's still a light at the end of the tunnel. There's still quite a way to go with that even. So, it shows that how difficult a year it's been. And it's only by collecting that data every week that you see that. Now, that's a global impact. I mean, that's across all of our clients, and our clients are in North America. They're in UK, predominantly North America and Europe, not many Southern Hemisphere ones. But so we're seeing that pattern across the whole globe. Now, organizations typically have these patterns internally. They have an organizational setback or a team setback or an individual has a setback. And the way the data works is it helps identify what the hot and cold spots are in your organization. Are people bouncing back? It is inevitable there'll be setups, but it's how we bounce back and do that. And we create a platform that does that. Now, the great thing about positivity, positive mental health, happiness, employee experience, whatever you want to call it, is that we know that it's very tied to the business agenda and leads to success. And, I can show you data on staff retention, productivity, creativity, and share price. I mean, the retention is fairly obvious that people who are unhappy leave more often. Maybe the speed of it might surprise you, but this is data where we're looking at how happy people were in quarter one and did they leave in quarter two. So twice as likely to leave next quarter. It's quick. Productivity. We kind of know that success leads to happiness, that, if you do well, you feel happy. These are measured 6 months apart. Okay. That does exist, but also existing is the other way around, which is that happiness, team positive experience leads to success. And actually it's twice as strong. So, the guy that said that culture eats strategy for breakfast was basically reporting on the fact that if you've got a strategy, you need people to be happy to put it into action. And that is very, very true. And in fact, if we think about it, it's kind of a new business model. It's like make teams, gel, then they do good work. And the other thing also works. So we've got a virtuous cycle appearing here. The third one is called is creativity. And I want to just give a little brief way that psychologists look at how they can measure that. Creativity is difficult to measure. But this is what's called the Dunker candle experiment. And they give people a task. They give you a candle, a box of tacks, and some matches. And they say, can you attach the candle to the wall in such a way that when you light it, the wax doesn't drip on the floor? And it's kind of a mind mess. But what you have to see is that there's a box. And you can empty the tacks and attach the box to the wall and then light the candle and it all works. Now, they basically take a control group they do nothing to, they give the experiment to. 13% of them solved it in 5 or 10 minutes, whatever it was, the length of the time. They then looked at the people, they put people into a negative mood, they agitated them into a fear mode or whatever. They found that 20% of them solved it. Now that's kind of interesting in that emotions are energy, they move out. And people who are experiencing a negative emotion, which aren't dysfunctional, they're functional, but they're dealing with, threats to us, they do get more creative, but not nearly as much as those that are in a positive mood. 75% of them solved it in the same length of time. And so if you're trying to be innovative, which goodness, don't we all have to be innovative in this world, not only a COVID world, but already, then actually positivity is massively, massively important for that. You can call it psychological safety if you want to, but it's basically that experience of working together and trusting each other. This even translates into share price. This is data from the US, but it's the S&P 500, it's sort of like the 500 top companies in the US. This is the actual figure, and then these are the ones that have done well on Glassdoor, great places to work with better cultures. And effectively, they've got about a 3% extra share price growth every year during that period. And that builds up. It's sort of Warren Buffett style returns on it. So every which way you look at it, happiness benefits people. It benefits individuals. Who doesn't want to be happy at work? It benefits organizations. And critically, kind of the engine of it is teams. That teams go both ways. That if you create a good team experience, people are happier. If teams perform well, it helps the organization perform well. And I think that collective small group is a brilliant intervention point for it. Now, happiness is good, positivity is good, but how do we create it? Well, taking the idea of the 5 ways to well-being and how successful they are, we've adapted these for organizations. So instead of targeting the individual, we're particularly targeting the system, the group. But of course, that is echoed at the individual level. And it starts with connect. Relationships are always going to be the key to our positivity. The next one is be fair, which is it's about people feeling treated fairly. That if you're not treated fairly, you feel angry, you don't even get into the system for how happy you are. The next one is empower, which is that, if we shape our own work, we can organize it, we can use our strengths, we feel better. The next one is challenge, which is that if we feel stretched, that's great for us. It's a total misunderstanding to think people want to do nothing and they'll be happy at work. They actually will be bored and unhappy. Most people anyway. And the final one is to feel inspired, which is to feel that your work is meaningful, that you're part of something bigger. And these 5 again become a systemic approach. Connect, be fair, empower, challenge, inspire. Now, I'm a statistician, so I'm going to put numbers to those. So I create a questionnaire about that, where you've got 3 questions for each of them. And so we have 15 topics that we look at. And of course, we've, as well as been tracking weekly happiness, we've been measuring these other ones. So we can look at the pre and post-COVID, or post-COVID hitting, because we're living with COVID things, and we can see which ones have improved. Creativity, influencing decisions. Perhaps these aren't surprising. These are things that people had to do in order to cope with COVID. But the ones that are falling are relational, team relationships, friendships at work, work-life balance, which is sort of relationships between work and life and us and our loved ones at home and how we fit that with work, that's fallen. Although people are working from home more, they probably got less boundaries between those 2 things and more, spillover effects from them. So it seems to be under pressure. So we not only need to think about, how we measure it, but we need to think about how we adjust, how we basically build in rituals in organizations that are going to actually help them act on this data, but also help them change their behavior. And I, as well as a statistician, I trained as a therapist when I was young, and I'm very much into the idea that we need to reflect and bring into awareness about what's going on. And I use numbers to do that. But you're really trying to create a learning feedback loop for organizations. And it has two forms. The one is the team-based one. That's the weekly measure, meet, act, repeat. So have a team meeting on a Monday morning for 15 minutes and discuss your results. And the whole platform is built towards that. We don't only gather data on how people have felt, we ask them what's gone well for them. Have they got any challenges they want facing? And we bring those into the team meeting and help them do that. By getting into that weekly flow, you start to take care of team culture every week. The next one is to create an organizational feedback loop, which is a more typically like a sort of staff survey, because we do this culture profile once a quarter. And it's more, let's analyze the results, let's make a plan, let's act. We help organizations through that by giving them data straight away so they get it immediately. So there's not a big pause and a big lag there. We push to the top the topics that they could most look at, be most important for them to do. And we help them create action plans about how to do that. And there's lots of dashboards and other things in the tool that do that. Now, those two feedback loops are actually highly interconnected. And if I would say that if anything is going to create magic in your organization, it's getting alignment between teams and the organizational goals. So I think of this as these two sort of embedded in each other. So the weekly hare is running around and the tortoise is slowly moving. Now, if a team is trying to change in the organization, is that they've got to climb up the inside of that, and that's very hard work. If a team is not wanting to change and the organization is, and it sort of feels like they're discombobulated and they're sort of being thrown around. Get the two together, that's it. That's wow. That's like when you're walking along and then you come to a travelator and you just start powering ahead. Two things are working together, and alignment is really where that happens. So at FridayPulse, we can help you with this. We are a free tool for people to use for 12 weeks, for organizations 50 to 1,000 people. You can come along, you can sign up, and we will support you to get an experience of using it. We started that in March or maybe April, COVID, because we realized no one was spending money, and we're going to reduce it to 6 weeks from January. But if you sign up before Christmas, then you'll get 12 weeks. But basically, you get the whole experience in 6 weeks as well. So, don't unnecessarily rush. But you get an experience of how you use it and whether you want to use it. We're also launching a product called Startup, which is for teams and organizations under 50. It's again, they'll have a 6-week trial. It's going to be like one of these credit card ones. You put it in each month and subscribe to. So both of those you can do. You can look at our platform for how to do that. You can email me if you want to. But then for individuals, we're just launching something we're calling Friday One, which is that people can do a test themselves, and it will show them against those 5 ways of connect, be fair, empower, challenge, inspire. Help them understand, what they're missing in their job, what they've got in it, and reflect on it. As I said, I'm a therapist. I'm a great believer in bringing into awareness and reflecting on it. So really, that's about the 5 ways to well-being and how you can promote mental health at work. There's a lot of thought gone into the platform, a lot of design, and a lot of that comes from the amazing experience I had of being lucky enough to be able to design the original 5 ways to well-being and then being so popular across the country. So my contact details are there. You'll find me on LinkedIn very much. And thank you very much indeed.